An array is a group of variables that share a common name, but you differentiate them by index numbers. So when you want to refer to a specific variable in an array, you can use the array name and the index number in parentheses. A really common example of an array would be to define a 12-string variable, but before you use an array, you must declare it. And you can declare it as either dim or public, and then you specify the number of elements that are in that array. So for example, here I'm declaring an array. I'm declaring months names as an array, and it's going to hold 12 different values in this case. And the values are going to be assigned the numbers 1 through 12. So eventually, my first element in the array will be January, the second one will be February, third one will be March, and so on. So I'll have month's name 1, month's name 2, month's name 3 in parentheses. And when you're declaring your array and you have your index numbers there, like I have 1 to 12, you actually only need to declare that upper bound. I could actually say just month's name 12. But here's the thing, if I either leave that lower index number blank, like if I just have month's name 12, then that array is actually considered to have 13 elements. So for instance, this declaration here, dim month's name 0 to 12, because 0 can hold an element, that gives you 13 elements. So does this. And that's something that you really have to be aware of. 0 is by default used for the lower index. But something that you can do before you start creating your arrays is that in the declaration area, you can actually type in the keywords of option base 1, and what that's going to do is it's going to always set, for that module, it's going to always set your base or your lower index to 1. All right, so here's an example. Again, if I were declaring my months as an array, so I have dim month's name 1 to 12 as byte. And then there's January is the first one, February is the second one, and March is the third one. So as you can see here, I'm storing a list of items that are the same type. They're all months. Now let me show you a quick example of how you can use an array. Okay, so here's a quick example of how to use an array. And you can find this workbook in the resources section for this lecture. So what I've done is I have a procedure called top 3 sales. And what I'm going to do is have a dialog box pop up where I can type in the name of my salespeople plus their sales amount. And I'm getting this information maybe from a report that was handed to me, something like that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to declare 2 arrays. I'm going to declare one array called salesperson, and it's going to be able to hold 3 different elements. You see the 3 there in parentheses. It's going to be a string. And then I'm also declaring sales amount as a currency. And that array is going to hold 3 different elements as well. And since I'm using a for next loop, my counter is going to be x. So I have for x equals 1 to 3. So this is going to run 3 times. An input box is going to pop up asking for the salesperson's name. And that's going to be assigned to the first element of the array. And then an input box will pop up asking for the sales amount, and that value will also be assigned to the first element in the array. This procedure is then going to put the salesperson's name into A2 and the salesperson's amount into B2. And then it's going to loop again. It's going to keep looping until it's done with the 3. Then it's going to put the word total inside of B4 because it's not there yet. And then it's going to sum up, and I'm using the worksheet function of sum here. It's going to sum up all the totals in B2 through 4, and it's going to put that into B5. And then just to show you that the elements in the array are still being stored within this procedure, I then have a message box coming up congratulating any one of the salespeople. I just picked salesperson 1 here for making, and then however much money they made. Actually, before I run this, let me go ahead and change this. This should actually be A5. All right, so I'll go ahead and run this. And I'll enter the first salesperson's name in. I'll put my name and the sales amount. The second salesperson here, another name and the sales amount. And the third salesperson with their sales amount. All right, so two things happened. One, I summed up the numbers using the worksheet function, and that's inside of B5. Also, I have my message box popping up, of course, with the congratulations for making, and then whatever the amount is. All right, I'll click on OK to get back to my Visual Basic. So throughout this procedure, if I wanted to call on the elements from my array for either calculating something different with the sales amounts, like maybe a commission on top of that, I can do that. Or I could also declare these variables. I can use public to declare these variables as public and use them in different procedures. So here with my static arrays, I have declared a variable, and then afterward, inside of parentheses, I told the system how many elements are going to be stored in that variable. And then throughout the code, I've assigned values to the elements in my variables.